Well, hi there. I'm going to show you how to do a visor sun hat, and I'm going to use Theresa Higby's tiny heart stitch to do it. She gave me permission to do this video, so I'm just going to get everything all ready, and away we will go. And I'm using a cotton yarn. It has some stretch to it. It's lacy ribbon yarn. Yeah, it's ribbon yarn. And it is Rico Design Fashion Summer Print. 50 grams. And you probably could read the meter better than I can. Yeah, about 65 meters, I think that is. And it's a really nice yarn. Doesn't have a color on it. Let's put this down here so I don't lose it. It doesn't have a color on it, but it's the one that's a gray and white mottled color. And so, oh, and then the nice thing about it too is the center pull's really easy to find. Really easy. Okay, get the end of my yarn here. There's my loom hook. So I'm using a 44 peg 5/8 inch loom from Cindywood Looms. It's equivalent to it's a 9.75, so it's equivalent to the one down in a Nifty Knitter set. And if you're using the 48, if you're using a 9.7, you're using, say, 48 pegs, you're going to want to have 2 extra pegs probably in the visor, or at least 1 extra. And if you're going smaller for a kid, you're going to do less. You're going to want it so that when you do your increase, you're close to half or a little less than half of the loom. So that's what you do. So I've cast on 16, or I've marked the 16th peg, and I'm going to cast on 16. I just put a little red marker here. So we're going to start by casting on 16. And so I'm going to just do a slip knot, put it on here, like that. There, put it on the wrong way. I want this yarn going this way. It's the first time I've ever put it on the wrong way too. Okay, so there it is. And then we're going to take this loom hook and put it right in the peg. Gee, I want to be on the black peg, not on the peg I'm going to increase. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to start on the black peg instead, and I'm going to put the loom hook in here, and I'm going to be pulling up this loop, and I'm just going to take it behind peg 1, put the working yarn through, snug it up. Behind the next one, working yarn through, snug it up, and I'm just going to pull this loop here. I want to make sure this one is snugged up, and I'm just going to secure it in front. Because I have the Cindywood loom, it's easy to do, but it's not necessary. And I'm just going to keep casting on like that until I get to the marker. Now, because this is a visor, I want my cast on to be tighter than usual, so I figured out a way of casting on to make it really nice and tight whenever you need a really tight cast on for some reason. And I like doing it with the chain. So you put the last loop on here, and then I'm going to do the one I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this over here. I'm going to take the hook, so here's the hook in the bottom loop, and I'm going to go on top of the top loop and scoop it up, just like that. And then I'm going to flip it over here. And this is called the purl over that Theresa Higby named the stitch, and she's given me permission to use it. She's the creator. And so there, this is a purl over I'm doing on here. And then I'm going to take this and flip it over this way. So it'll come over just like that. And I'm going to do a purl over on the next peg. So I'm going to put the hook in the bottom, scoop up the yarn, and just flip it over the top, and then just snug it up. And you don't want it too tight. You can check to make sure you're going to be able to knit that over. Don't get it too tight. And then we're going to go over to the next one. And so this isn't a purl, even though it's called a purl over. A purl would have the working yarn down here. What we're doing is we're having the working yarn on top. We're scooping under like doing a true knit. Scooping this up still like doing a true knit, but we don't take it off the peg. We just flip it over. And just snug it up a little bit, you make sure they're loose because you don't want them too tight. Because it'll be very hard to knit over if you get them too tight. But we are tightening up the cast on with them. This stitch really tightens things up. So just keep doing that. And I usually just go like that and flip it over with my loom hook. Like that, like that. With some yarns, I get the right tension right when I flip it over, but with this cotton yarn, I'm being a little bit more careful. Now you can use other yarns. You want to have a little bit of stretch. Now this yarn is a super bulky. That's what they say it is. It's not very super bulky looking. It barely makes bulky, but this stitch is so tight that if you were using any other kind of stitch, it'd be really loose for most stitches. It's tight because of doing the purl over, so it makes it smaller. So if you're not using a tape like this that says it's a super bulky and using some other kind of yarn to do this, you're going to want a thinner yarn than you would normally use on this size of loom. So a very thin bulky or a thicker worsted would work. But do a swatch to make sure. Okay, and so I'm just doing this. I'm getting better at just flipping it over with the right tension. And we're even going to do this end peg. And we're going to tighten that and then pull it back just like we did on the other side. Okay, and to get a really tight cast on. So now we're going to do the E-wrap. So we've pulled that one back and we're just going to E-wrap. So we're always going to be going to this one direction when we E-wrap, and we're always going to be doing the purl over the other direction. So just E-wrap all the way down, and the last peg we just go over, do a U-wrap over it, and knit it. It's going to be tight. Knit it, and then come over and just give it another knit, and then we can just knit these over, and that one's secure and ready to go. And we just knit these over. And see, they're going over easily for me. I would not recommend using a cotton yarn with no stretch at all to do this stitch, although you could do it. I have done it. But it's much easier if it has some stretch. Okay. So we knit this one over, and now we come over here and we do our purl over stitch. And so that's all we do is E-wrap one way, purl over the other way. And this is our second time doing the purl over. We want to do it 4 times for the size of brim, for the height of the brim that I want anyway. You're welcome to do it a little bit different. But I just want to have enough of a brim to shade my eyes in the summer. There. And again, I'm just checking and make sure these are all loose enough, and they are. Tricky one there. Oh, that's because my yarn's getting tight here. Okay. But anyway, you can always do your yarn overs, pull it out as far as you want, put it over and tighten it. Whatever way works for you the best. You get faster and faster at doing purl overs, and I actually find I'm enjoying them. A lot easier than doing a purl, in my opinion, because you're just flipping it over, and easier than doing a true knit too. You're just flipping it over. And then we go over this last peg, just you wrap over, knit it over, it's going to be tight, come back and knit it over again that way. And then we're going to do our E-wrap down. And then flat wrap over this last one. Do at least one knit to hold it in place and knit them over. And come back here and give it a tug if it got loose, and make sure you do your knit over this way. And now you're going to do your third row of purl overs. So I'm just going to put it on pause now, and you're going to do this third row of purl overs, and then come back with the E-wrap and do your last one, and then I'll meet you back up there. Okay, so I've been heading back. This is my 4th time back here, and I'm at this peg here before the last peg, because this peg now is going to get a purl over stitch. Just give it a purl over stitch. Doesn't want to do it for me. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we are going to add a stitch there. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to go under here and scoop up the yarn and put it on this peg here, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do a purl over, like this, and pull it nice and tight. There we go. And then come back, sliding it back, make sure it's nice and tight that way, slide it back like we did on the beginning pegs, and then we're coming back here, so we're E-wrapping. So we're now E-wrapping that peg, and we E-wrap down, now we E-wrap this last peg too. And then we're going to come over, I'm keeping it tight, and we're going to do a purl over that, whoop, purl over motion, and get this loop and put it on here, and then come over and do a purl over on this peg, keeping everything nice and tight, pulling it nice and tight, and then coming back. There we go. And then this one gets a purl over, and then we'll just stay there to hold it. We'll leave it there to hold it while we go and knit over our E-wraps. And now we can take a look at the stitch too. Just pull it down here. Here's what it looks like. Really cute little stitch, and as you see, this is pretty nice and tight for using a yarn like this on a 5/8 gauge. I mean, it says it's a super bulky, but I think you can see how thin this really is. It's a tape, so it's fatter on that side and then real skinny on the other side. So there, and here's the cast on we did, so it's a lot tighter than, let's see if I can get, so you can see it's a lot tighter than just a chain stitch would be. Tightened it up by putting the purl over there. And here's how we are so far. Okay, so now we did the first purl over already on there to hold it, so we just purl over all the way back. And I might as well just meet you up there at this other edge after we've done the purl over all the way back. Okay, so I've made it down to here. So I had started with a certain number of pegs. I did one increase, so we'll count them now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And so I'm going to increase once more, and then I'll be at 20. My peg's 44, so I'm getting close to half, and that's good enough for me. I don't like it to be the whole half, really. I like it a little shorter. So what I do now is I'm one from the second peg, so we come over and we're going to do a purl over on this white peg. And pull it. And then we're going to go down and scoop up the yarn and put it on this peg here and tighten that up, and we're going to come over here and do a purl over and just add this peg in, tighten it up good, and then we're going to pull it back. There we go. Make sure it's nice and tight. There we go. And then we're going to come over here and do our E-wrap. Back. And that's the last increase I'm going to do. You can make your visor a little longer before you start doing these, or even increase more than I'm going to do. depending on the size you're making and what you're doing, or less. Okay, and then we're going to come down and we're going to E-wrap this last peg and knit it over, and I'm going to come and scoop up the working yarn and put it on this peg, tighten it up, come over and do the purl over stitch, and just put it over like that and tighten it really good. And then we're going to pull it back and we're going to go on this peg and give it its purl over. There we go, and that will just hold it, and then we're just going to knit these all off. See, that one got a little tight, but that's okay. And knit these all over. And there. Okay, and as you can see, our visor's gotten a lot longer now. Okay, so now we can just do our purl overs down. And so I'll meet you back over around there. Okay, so I'm one away here. So on the last peg, I'm just going to U-wrap it. And then I'm going to knit over it, like that. And then I'm going to E-wrap back. All the way to this one, and that one just gets a flat wrap. And then we're just going to knit them all over. There we go. For some reason that last one there got tight, but I guess that's because we added in. The rest of them are loose. And easy to knit over. Now when we come back around, this won't be our number one peg anymore. This one will be. And there is our brim. And it's a nice size. Okay, so we're down here. And we just did our wrap here. And I'm just going to tighten it because it would have got loose. And now we're going to cast on the rest of the loom using the same stitch we cast on in the beginning, this crochet chain one. So I've got the loop, and then I just put it behind here. So you saw what I did. I just scooped up, same way we've been doing the purl overs. We just scoop it up, and then we put it behind this peg, and we just cast it on. And we just do that all the way around the loom. Okay, so I'll just catch up to you when I get close to the end. Okay, so now we're over here. So I'm going to do this last one. And then I'm just going to, we're going to be doing the purl over. So yes, I want to put it on here. Okay, so now we're just going to do the purl over, and we're going to take both these loops over. There. Take them over one at a time, I think will be easier. Okay, so we'll go under this, get that one out of the way, go under this one. A little bit awkward, but there we go. I'm just going to take them both over. Yeah, no, I'm not going to. I'll leave them there, and it'll be easier to wrap them off. It can just stay there. Okay, so then it's all purl overs, because these were all wraps. And so basically all we're going to do is we're going to purl over all the way around the loom, because this is ready for the purl over and our cast-on's ready for the purl over to tighten it up. So we're just going to purl over all the way around the loom, and then we'll catch up when we're over here. Okay, I've worked my way around, and I'm going to do my purl over here. And then when we get back to this peg, this is the first one we did the purl over on, and I had tried to get this one off with the purl over, but it's just going to be too awkward, so we're going to get it over with the wrap stitch instead. And I put a temporary stitch marker because I will slip on one of my permanent ones, but I didn't want to do it while I had 2 yarns to look after. So now we do our wrap stitch all the way around. And we're on the way to doing the hat body. My way of doing wrap, I push it down like that so it doesn't get too tight. And then the last stitch is the one before our marker. This is our number 1 stitch now, and so I'm just going to knit that off to hold it. And then I can knit off this one, which I'll do in 2 motions. And there we go. That is now knitted off. And so we just go around and knit these off. So I'll catch up to you after I do that. Okay, so I'm back down here. And I'm just going to, first I'll take off this stitch marker that way. It'll be hard enough to get this one on. And I'm just going to hold this in here in some way that will keep that stitch, and if I lose it I will pick it up again and get the stitch marker on in this awkward position. Oh, well, lost my stitch, but that's okay. Stitch marker on, there we go. And then I'm just going to get my loom hook and pick up that stitch. There it is, and put it back on, because I just like to get marked with a permanent marker. And there we go. That is now our number 1 peg. So this is where we'll always chain stitches. So You'll always know what stitch you're on because your E-wrap is going to look like this. So when you do your purl over, which we're going to do right here, is always going to look like this with the two little knobs right there and there. And so you'll always know where you are, even if you stop, because you can see that's an E-wrap, you can see that is a purl. And so we just continue on until you get the length of hat you want. And you can take a look at how our brim is looking. There it is, and there's our sides and cast-ons looking like this. And our there's what our side will look like. So here's what our visor will look like with the, there it is, the tightened edge. And so we'll just work up a little bit and catch up and see what we're looking like after we've gone on a bit. And this later on will be, has a little knot in it, so you'll just pull it up a little bit like that and then sew it in, weave it in, and that's all there really is to it. And then we'll keep going until it's time to reduce it a bit and cast off, but we'll go for a while until we get quite long and take a look at it and compare. And the other side, I guess I'll show you the other side, just looks like this. It's nice and smooth. And as you can see, it's pretty thick. So it's going to shade out the sun. And yet it's a cotton yarn and won't be too hot. Okay, so I'll catch up to you in a little while. Okay, so I've got it the length that I want it to be. It's just a tiny bit over 6 inches, which is good for this kind of hat for me with my very small head. And so I am going to bind it off, and I think the best bind off for it is going to be Loom Hat's original one she did of a flat bind off, where she used 2 separate strings to bind it off. That's the one I like. Okay, so here I am. I bound off the hat. I used Loom Hat's video, and I'll put a link in the written part of the video. And this is what the tiny heart stitch of Theresa Higby's looks like. And it did a nice transition from the brim right up until where it's going in the round. The stitch looks the same going down. It's really nice that way. It looks the same in the round or flat. And when I did do the bind off, it's really important that you bind off from an E-wrap stitch and not from the purl over stitch, because the purl over stitch you would have a really hard time with. It's a very tight stitch. So use the E-wrap stitch when you start doing the bind off. And there you go. That's all there is to it. Okay, so until next time, bye.